Hey guys, so we've just had new blue runes added to the game, and these are quite a bit stronger than the old runes which we had, and I'm going to be covering them in this video. But just before we start, I want to talk about the patch notes which we recently had. So these patch notes should go live, as well as the server mergers coming to a few of the servers, including mine. But if we just look at the feature updates, we can see that there's been some rune drop rate changes, and it reads that we are increasing the drop rates of runes and Abyssal Essence within Erebin Castle and the Abyssal Verge. These adjustments are to make sure that these two new game modes are the most potent source to craft and earn runes. We will continue to monitor these new drops and your feedback around the rune system as it continues to expand and grow. So this looks like a fairly good change. We'll have to wait and see just how good the drop rates are. But as well as this, there's a couple more changes which they've added. I'm not really going to read through all of those, but it also says, in addition, we are increasing the experience, gold, and also item drops in both game modes. Hitting a higher score threshold in the Abyssal Verge and the danger meter in Castle Erebin will bolster these rewards even further. So this is actually also really good because it gives people kind of a challenge to push for higher scores and earn more rewards. And I hope that this will be reflected when the patch notes go live. So now let's move on to talk about the new blue runes which we've just had added to the game. The first thing I noticed right off the bat is we didn't just get one rune. Previously we only could see that the ENT rune was going to be released, but we actually got 5 new runes, and these correlate to each individual slot. Bear in mind that the head and the shoulder slot are both shared. So we have the offhand slot, the chest slot, the main hand slot, the head and shoulders, like I said, and also the leg slot. So this makes for the 5 runes. And basically we can see already that if we scroll all the way down here, it says more runes will be available in 14 days. And we've got one of the runes teased, which is the ATI rune. But I believe that once again, they're going to release 5 new runes in about 2 weeks. So let's just talk a bit more about these blue runes here. So the first thing that you can see is that the rune synthesis actually follows the same rule which we had for the grey runes here. So we can see that the ENT rune, which was added, requires 3 bowl runes to synthesize one of them. And if we go further down, we can see that the DRO rune requires 3 ENT runes. So just like I mentioned in my previous video with how this works, it's just going to work like this, where every 10 Paragon levels where a new rune is added, it requires 3 of the previous level runes to synthesize one of them. So I would assume if it works like this, then the ATI rune, which we're going to have, is going to require 3 ECE runes to craft. So it could be a good idea to stock up on a few of these ECE runes just to craft the maximum possible ATI runes for your setup. So one thing which kind of frustrated me about this rune synthesis menu is that it doesn't show you the slots of each rune. So it doesn't show you, for example, that this ENT rune is a rune that can be equipped into the leg slot, and the DRO rune is a rune that can be equipped in the offhand slot. So you can actually check this by going to the market and looking at the rune section, and it will tell you exactly which rune is equipped in which slot. So we can see for these new runes, for example, this one is legs, this one is offhand, this one is chest. But it was just super frustrating because in this menu you can't see what bonuses it gives. So it's just really annoying to have all the information in one place on the screen. So what I went ahead and did is I actually made my own resource for the runes, and I've just updated my resource sheet. I'll leave a link in the description below. But just looking at this resource sheet is going to provide you with all the information. So this includes everything like the paragon, the base attribute, and the bonuses. And I'll just share a bit of this in this video, just so we can compare these new blue runes to what we previously had and see if they're actually better. And also see if we can gain some kind of information for the future runes that we're going to have added to the game. So let's go ahead and start with the leg slot. So for the leg slot, we currently have the AUD, the LUX, and the ENT runes. And you can see that for all of these new blue runes, you can see that there's going to be a common theme, which is that the first bonus property of the blue rune is actually just the same as the bonus property of the first rune, which we had added in the game for that slot. So the AUD rune has a bonus of stun resistance increased by 2%, and the ENT rune also has the same bonus with an extra added bonus, which we didn't have in the game before. So just looking at this slot, if we were to compare the ENT rune and the LUX rune, I would say that the ENT rune is probably slightly better. It's giving you this new effect, which is the 0.9 healing of your maximum life every second while out of combat, and it's a pretty nice effect to have. It could be decent in PvP. I'm not sure if this effect gets strifed or not, but either way, it's nice to have a heal without using your bandage or using your potion. So I would probably recommend testing this one out and using it. So the other thing which we can gain from this is the base attribute increases for the runes. So for the first rune which we had, which was the AUD rune, we had a 3% base attribute increase. This was followed by a 4% base attribute increase for the second level of grey runes. For the blue runes, we have a 5% increase. And then for the rare, we have a 6% increase. This was shown in the old patch notes, which they deleted. And then finally, for the legendary, we have a bit of a bigger bump. We have an 8% increase in base attribute stats. So this is kind of consistent across all of the different legendary item slots in the game. It just follows this same pattern: 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So other than that, I haven't really been able to decipher much information for the rare and legendary rune in this tier. All I can tell you is that the next rune, which was teased, is the ATI rune, and it's going to be a leg slot rune, and it should arrive on the 8th of July in 2 weeks from now. And then for the legendary rune, as far as I can tell from the artwork in the old patch notes, this rune should be called the ZUH rune. And once again, we don't really have any information on it, but I will be talking a bit more about the speculation for the rare and legendary runes. So let's move on now to talk about the offhand slot. So I'm just going to be comparing the bonuses of the blue rune that we got. So this is the DRO rune, and this gives you the elite damage, which once again follows the same pattern. It gives you the bonus from the first rune, so you've got the 2% elite damage, and you've got a new property here, which is the damage taken reduced by 1.5%, which is also consistent with every other blue rune that we got. So overall, I would say that this is a pretty nice upgrade to both the NOU rune and the ORD rune. It should work a bit better in both PvP and PvE modes, so I would definitely recommend upgrading to this. So next, let's talk about the rare rune in this group, which is going to be the URS rune, which I'm going to give a bit of speculation about just from the patch notes which we had. From the patch notes, we can actually see the bonuses of this rune. Bear in mind that these might change, and any speculation in this video could actually turn out to be false. This is just from the information which I've gathered from the old patch notes and just doing a bit of extrapolation and guesswork on my part. So for this rune, we have 8% elite damage, and also damage to full life enemies increased by 10%. And then finally, we've got primary attack damage increased by 6%. And just like the ATI rune, we should expect to get this rune in the third batch of updates, where all of the red or yellow runes will be released, and that should be in 2 weeks from now on the 8th of July. So one thing we can gain from this is that the bonuses look pretty similar. We can see that the elite damage is still there, but it's just been multiplied by 4 from the first level rune. And the damage to full life enemies increased by 10% is also consistent with the second level of the runes, which is the ORD rune. It's just been multiplied by 2. And then we've got this new property, which is the primary attack increased by 6%. I believe that this is the bonus which is going to be exclusive to the rare runes. But what I can guess is that there's going to be a pattern for all of these rare runes, just like there is for the blue runes. So it's most likely going to be the first bonus for these runes is going to be the bonus from the first level rune in this tier, multiplied by 4. Then the second bonus is going to be the second level rune multiplied by 2. And then finally, I think we're going to have a new property, like I said, which is for the rare runes. And I think that there will actually be a relationship between the rare rune stats and the legendary rune stats, but this is just my speculation. I think that the legendary runes most likely are going to follow the same stats as the rare runes. It might just be that the rare rune bonus is actually going to get multiplied by 2. So in this case, I think that the legendary rune is actually going to have the elite damage 8%, the damage to full life enemies 10%, and then the primary attack is going to get doubled to become 12%. But this is purely my speculation based off the information that we got for the legendary runes, which I'll be sharing a bit later in this video. So moving on to talk about the chest essence, I'm not really going to bore you guys too much. It follows the same pattern as before. So for the VOX, which is the new one, you can see that it's having the property from the WEH rune, and then you have this new property which reads that evasion rating is increased by 0.6% for every nearby enemy up to a maximum of, and then it doesn't say exactly what the maximum is, but they obviously need to correct this inside the game. In my opinion, evasion rating in this game is actually a pretty strong stat. We do have evasion rating, for example, on some Demon Hunter essence, for example, the Vengeance Runeus Path essence, which actually gives evasion rating, and this essence turns out to be pretty strong, but I'm not sure if the 0.6% will justify losing out on the block chance increase by 2%. I'd have to test this a bit more, but for now, if you do get this rune, I would suggest testing it out and checking how well it works. So now talking about the combined slot, which is the head/shoulders slot, we actually have this new blue rune here, which is the RAE rune, and the bonuses it has says that damage taken while moving is decreased by 1.5, and then the new bonus, which is maximum life increased by 1.5. This is a very nice rune, but you have to compare this to the previous tier rune, which is the IMM, which gives you an attack speed increase of 2%. I believe that the IMM rune is actually going to be a better choice than the RAE because it has the attack speed, and this is going to give you increased damage. The RAE rune isn't really going to buff anything related to your damage. It's nice to have the extra 1% in the base attribute increase, but I think that it isn't justified to give up the attack speed increase. For tank classes like Barbarian or maybe even Crusader, it probably is worth upgrading to the RAE rune in PvP modes, because the maximum life is actually quite a nice bonus to have here. So other than that, I'm going to skip over the rare rune, which is the FA rune in this slot. The next rune is the LEV rune, which is the legendary rune. So this rune was actually teased in the old patch notes, and these are the bonuses that it has. So it has a damage increase by 8% to enemies below 30% life. Your primary attacks have 12% chance to reduce enemy attack and movement speeds by 20% for 3 seconds. And then finally, you've got the big one, which is the crit hit damage increased by 12%. So I was kind of confused about this rune because I saw it was slotted into the head slot in the screenshot. So I can assume one of two things from this. The first is that they actually changed the slot of this rune, and it's no longer going to be a head and shoulders slot. This is actually very similar to the bonuses that we get in the Mainhand rune slots. So this is probably a rune which is to be slotted in the Mainhand slot, but it could be a thing where legendary runes could actually be slotted in any place of your choice. I'm not too sure which one it is, to be honest, whether they've made a mistake or they made a change, or this limitation is going to be lifted for legendary runes and we can equip, let's say, 8 of these LEV runes to have a really insane crit hit damage increase. So if we just also take a look at the Mainhand runes, and we can just do a comparison. So the new blue rune which we got is the ECE rune, and this reads that damage is increased by 2% to enemies below 30% life, and we also got a movement speed increase, which is really nice. So it obviously is a very nice upgrade compared to the PYR and the bold runes, but as you can see, the stats here are incredibly similar to the LEV rune, which is where I got my assumptions from. But the other thing is that we can kind of see how the legendary rune is getting its stats. So here it kind of follows the same as the rare rune. So the first bonus is coming from the first rune in the group, and this bonus gets multiplied by 4. So the 2% becomes 8% damage to enemies below 30% life. And then we've got the second bonus coming from the second rune in the slot, and this bonus is multiplied by 2. So the 6% chance becomes a 12% chance. And then finally, this critical hit damage, I believe that this is coming from the rare rune, and the rare rune is actually going to have critical hit damage increase of 6%. And then legendary runes will have this multiplied by 2. But this is just purely my speculation. It could be that rare runes and legendary runes have their own exclusive bonuses, so don't quote me on that. It's just purely my speculation. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover for the blue runes that we got, as well as the speculation for the rare and legendary runes. So the takeaway is that it is kind of worth to upgrade to these blue runes once you do get them, or you could synthesize for them if you'd like. The only slot which I would kind of recommend to still keep is the attack speed on the IMM rune for the head and shoulders slot. One thing to note is that blue runes can actually be dropped from both the new modes, the Abyssal Verge and the Ereban, and also open world as well as dungeons and every other mode in the game. It might just be a slightly rarer drop chance, but it's nice to know that we can get these from both drops as well as rune synthesis. For the rare runes, I'm not too sure if you can get them from both drops and rune synthesis. In the old patch notes, we could clearly see that rare runes can be synthesized, so I would expect us to be able to get them in that way, but I'm not too sure if they're also available from drops. We'll just have to wait and see when they're released in 2 weeks, and the same applies to the legendary runes. So if you've made it this far to the end of the video, I'm actually going to give you a bonus tip to make a bit of platinum when the new runes are introduced. So probably a few days just before the patch is introduced to introduce the new rare runes, you could potentially collect or buy up the last rune in the group, which is the ECE rune for the main hand, because 3 of these was synthesized for the first new rune, which is the ATI rune. And usually when new runes are introduced, people are buying them up off the market for max price. I mean, when this new group of runes was introduced, I synthesized ball runes to convert to ENT runes, and I actually managed to sell them for the max price. So I could see that the same strategy also works when the next batch of runes are introduced. So with that said, guys, I hope this video has been useful. If it has been, then do consider subscribing and liking the video. If you've noticed I've missed something, then don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. But I just want to thank you all once again so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.